Okay, so don't let the imposter syndrome kill your vibe. This is the subject of our topic, and I'm going to talk about how you can bring your potential and you can bring whatever background you have into tech, and then it can really be value. And, I'm going to talk about how any background in humanities, which is my case, a non-STEM background, this can really be an asset in tech. So don't be afraid. So who am I? My name is Olga Stokowiec. It's a name that is difficult to pronounce, and it's on a previous slide, this one, yeah, Olga Stokowiec. And I'm an ex-lawyer. I used to be a litigation lawyer, working for Polish and international law firms, doing infrastructural disputes and administrative law, customs law, a little bit of renewable resources and media law, so all kinds of cases. I have 2 master's degrees. I studied law at the University of Warsaw, and then I transitioned into languages, and I studied applied translation studies at the University of Leeds, specializing in Italian into English and Russian into English translation. And I speak 5 languages: English, Polish, German, Italian, and Russian. And actually, I didn't do any coding in my life before October 2019. So really, my path into the current position of localization manager at a tech startup was quite short, and I took quite a big leap when I left law. But really, how did it happen? I mean, how did I even end up in tech? Being lawyer at first and doing translation later. And really, when I was starting my degree in translation studies, my goal was to just be a freelance translator, live somewhere in a remote village and just have plenty of time to walk my dog, and yet I'm a localization manager at a tech startup. So what really is localization? Localization is translation plus cultural adaptation of products and content to new markets, to local markets, to new languages. So it's really a mix of the kind of cultural awareness and linguistic skills. And this is what drew my attention, and this is what helped me. What I decided that I would like to do instead of being a freelance translator. So how did this even start? How did I even start thinking about tech as a person who had really zero interest in becoming a techie before October 2019? And I wanted to be an actress when I was in high school, and I've always kind of thought about myself as, a humanities person. I really liked writing, reading. I was super interested in history. So what am I doing in tech? And how did I even, make it? So at first, when I arrived in Leeds, we had this module that was called CAT module, CAT being computer assisted translation. And I just entered a room during my first class, and it was a room full of computers, and it turned out that I was expected to actually use those specialist tools. So the CAT tools are made to facilitate translation processes, translation workflows. They are meant to facilitate the recycling of translation resources, creation of glossaries, and also they are meant to increase your efficiency. So I entered the room and I realized that translation is not about just, researching and being an artist, but it's also a little bit of being, technology savvy and understanding what's going on the technical side of things. And the first thing that really was a challenge for me was a file management. So I realized that there are different file formats, and if I'm a translator specializing in digital or in marketing, if you're a marketing translator, you will probably not be translating a lot of, flyers or newspapers. You will be rather working in digital marketing. So you will have to handle various files, JSON files or HTML, and you have to understand what is translatable and what is not. What are the tags that you do not want to mess with because it will ruin the structure of the file, and what is actually something that is your piece to work on. So to better understand the tags and to make sure that I don't ruin the files that I work on, I started learning HTML and CSS, and I started reading all kinds of resources. I started the free code camp course that is called Responsive Web Design, and it's great because there are all kinds of small chunks of information that you can test and try, and it's really step by step, and everything is explained great in a really great way. I also started attending codebar, obviously, and this is also how I got here, because I learned what codebar was, and I started attending Manchester chapter of codebar. And yeah, learning HTML, learning CSS, and getting a little bit of JavaScript gave me a good grasp of what user interface is and how it works, and what even front end is, and how to better handle files. So I think when I had in my head still that I wanted to be a translator, getting some knowledge of front end was really useful for me. But then I also started volunteering as a translation project manager. At first, I was doing some projects at the university. I was working on university projects as a translation project manager. Then I volunteered for the International Rescue Committee. That is a global humanitarian organization, and I realized that actually, because I had this soul of performer that wanted to be an actress back in high school, maybe actually project management would be more of my path than the translation itself. And so I decided to merge all the skills together, and I started looking for project management jobs, and that's how I landed my first job as a project manager in a web development agency in New York, England. So that was really my path towards tech. So the coding skills were really helpful, and the coding skills were really helpful, but ultimately I decided not to be a software engineer, and ultimately I decided to kind of focus more on my extrovert side of personality and be a project manager. And ultimately, I moved into localization. So coding skills definitely helped me, but were they the only important assets? No, not really. But the power of transferable skills. So the skills from my background in humanities were super important. Even though I started working in tech, even though I was dealing with front-end, back-end engineers, UX designers, all kinds of stakeholders, clients, etc., the coding skills were not the most important part of my job. I mean, they helped me understand the framework, but they were not the core. So critical thinking was super important because I had to read a lot of information, process it, assess the resources, and really use it in a way that worked for me. Oral and written communication skills were super important. Also, empathetic communication. So understanding that it's a very different thing to communicate with developers. It's a very different thing to communicate with your clients, with translation agencies and translators. And it's a very different thing to convey good messages and bad messages and bad news. So communication skills were super important. Leadership skills that I really gained when I was that's my dog barking in the background. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Leadership skills were super important because I had to make decisions. I had to frame the situations. I had to create the processes and plans and take care of the budgets and timelines. And really, show integrity and collaborate with people and be convincing but not authoritarian. So leadership skills were important. Then self-management, because when you're a project manager or a localization manager, you need to prioritize tasks, you need to plan the tasks, you need to plan the workflows. So that's really important. And then flexibility and adaptability. When you work in Agile, this is what it's all about, flexibility and adaptability. You need to really be nimble and work in an ever-changing environment and respond to the communication and internal processes. So that's very important. And the last thing, linguistic sensitivity. So this is something that came from my passion for languages and translation studies, and definitely not something that that was part of my any kind of tech background. But ultimately, linguistic sensitivity was something that brought a huge value to my work as a localization manager, because when I was showing my resume to my potential employers, and they were seeing, that I studied in Germany and in Poland and in the UK and in Italy, and I spoke all those languages, and I had a master's degree in translation studies, it was turning out that a non-STEM background can actually be a massive asset. So the very important thing that I want to say here is that if you are now switching jobs, if you're switching careers, if you're thinking about getting into tech right now, having background in humanities or having any non-tech background is not a burden. And spending time on studying law, spending time on learning languages was not a waste of time for me, because I translated it into something that is an asset in a tech company. So, but how can those soft skills bring real value for a tech company? Because obviously they're important in everyday work, but are there any actual numbers to justify bringing soft skills, bringing background in humanities into tech? And I'm going to talk about it on the basis of localization, because this is the field that I'm most familiar with. So localization, translation, cultural adaptation. Let's talk about 10 most spoken languages in the world. These are English, Mandarin, Chinese, Hindi, Spanish, Standard Arabic, Bengali, French, Russian, Portuguese, and Urdu. And these numbers taken from the Ethnologue 200, so the list of 200 most spoken languages in the world, these numbers are both native and non-native speakers, so all the people speaking those languages combined together. And the speakers of 10 most spoken languages in the world, there are a little bit over 5 billion of people. That's a lot of people, but also it is only about 65% of the global population, which means that even if you translate your product or website or a mobile app or whatever it can be into the 10 most spoken languages in the world, like 35% of the global population is still outside of your reach. So what do? What about the rest of the globe? And also there are numbers that show the importance of not only the languages that are understandable for your audience, but also they show the importance of having a product in a native language. So if you want to show people the products in their native languages, it means that even more than 35% of the global population will be left alone if you translate it into the 10 most spoken languages in the world. And 65% of the users declare that they prefer content in their native language, even if it's poor quality. And 73% of the users want product reviews in their own language. And 66% of the users use online machine translation, myself included. I live in Germany right now, and even though my German is decent, like I can survive in a German city, I can survive administrative situations and call centers. If I read something on the website, I still use Google Translate because I want to be 100% sure that that I understand what I'm reading. And 40% of the users, which is almost half of the users, will not buy in other languages. I mean, languages other than their own native language, which suddenly means that if you want to sell a global product, languages are a pretty big deal, and focus on humanities can actually bring extra value. So, so if you want to build a global product, you actually need people who know the languages, and those people will be essential. And you need people who understand localization workflows, so how to work around it, how to plan it, how to run quality assurance of the translation, and how to run functionality quality assurance of the translation. So how does the translation work in the user interface? And also you need people who will help you respect local cultures. So all those people who have this knowledge of localization, of languages, of translation, all those people will likely be the people with the background in humanities. So suddenly it looks like if you speak languages, if you have those skills, and if you add a little bit of the tech background and tech knowledge, you can be a massive asset to a global tech company. And just recently I was attending a webinar with Google, and looks like Google has 4 teams just for localization. Captions show that it's 14. No, I meant 4 teams just for localization, covering different aspects of localization and translation. So this is very important. Which brings me to a conclusion that you don't have to be a software engineer to bring value into tech. You don't have to have a degree in computer science to bring value into tech. And if you have passions, that are non-technical, if you have passions for languages or anthropology or history, or even you like reading books or you like dating people, these are all assets that that can be translated into a big value for a tech company. And if you add a little bit of the tech skills to it, so like coding or SEO or UX research, or if you want to get into data science, so if you get a little bit of the tech skills on top of your passion, you can actually create your own niche and just bring your passion to the tech industry. So I'm bringing languages, but on my LinkedIn feed recently popped an anthropologist who was a UX designer popped up. So knowing the humanities can actually be very important. And it might be scary at first, of course, because it's a process, and you're, let's say, quitting your job, or you're just deciding to change careers. It's a big shift, and you're getting into a new domain that you are not really a specialist in, at least not yet. So you start knowing nothing. You then reach the peak of man stupid, i.e. the moment when you think so much about the subject that you're basically an expert, but then there's a reality check and you hit the valley of despair. That I think I'm still kind of in the valley of despair, slowly entering the slope of enlightenment in the field of localization. But if you are consistent, if you are determined, if you know what you want, and if you keep an eye on the goal, you will finally reach the plateau of sustainability, and you will be expert in the field, and you will actually make your niche work for you. You will make your passions work for you. So it may be scary at first, but don't give up, because the Dunning-Kruger effect, I think I can say that it is scientifically proven that everything will be all right in the end, that you will become an expert in the field that you want. So what are the key takeaways from our meeting? So first of all, your passions are valid. I know there are a lot of people who are new to tech in the room. I myself consider myself being quite new to tech. So your passions are valid, no matter where you're coming from, and you don't have to be you don't have to have been coding since high school to be in tech, and you can find a role for yourself. And your passions can translate into commercial value. That sounds pretty brutal, but the truth is, if you want to find a job, you need to kind of prove that you bring a commercial value in the company. So your passions can do that. If you have all those soft transferable skills, if you know languages, if you're passionate about anthropology, about problem solving, history, etc., this is all something that if you spice it up with some tech skills, you can translate it into commercial value. And be nimble and keep exploring. So keep learning beyond the uni. Use all the online resources. Keep networking. Attend conferences. Keep reading, and eventually be consistent in your effort. This is very important because it will be hard. There will be hurdles. There will be mental breakdowns, but it will be all right. So that was really it. That was my talk. I hope it helped you a little bit to see how even if you have background in humanities or any other diverse background, you can still make it an asset, and you can still market it as an asset. So feel free to connect with me if you have any questions that you maybe don't want to ask here. You can text me on LinkedIn. You can ping me on Twitter, and I will be more than happy to connect with all of you. So now Q&A time. I don't know, I'm gonna scroll a little bit the chat here. I see one question. Do you think you'll stay in tech forever? Wow, that's a tough question. I've not thought about it really yet. I think tech is a really is a space that is very interesting and that is very appealing because it gives you a lot of opportunities to grow in many different areas and many different directions. And you can really use your transferable skills in many different ways. And I think the localization field is really still growing, and many new trends are appearing, and a lot of things are happening. And also the language industry for tech is a really massive field. So you can translate video games, you can translate Facebook, you can translate mobile apps, you can do a lot of things. You can switch to computational linguistics and go towards more machine learning, natural language processing, and doing this side of linguistics in tech. So I think there are many options, and I'm not considering leaving tech yet, definitely. So this is really something that is interesting for me now, and this is a field that I really want to explore further and dig deeper. And taking into consideration the Dunning-Kruger effect, I'm still on the slope of enlightenment. So I'm still in the phase where I'm learning a lot. And I still have not reached a plateau of sustainability, so the level when I'm an expert in the field, and I really love that. So I think I still want to stay and learn as much as possible. Yeah, so I hope that answers your questions. Oh, okay, one more question. Any top tips for learning a new language, whether a technology or a traditional speaking language? I think consistency and determination, because again, learning languages is you start a new language, you learn how to introduce yourself and ask for directions or ask about the weather, and you think you're so smart, and then you start talking to native speakers and it gets scary. So I think consistency and determination are very important, but also using the resources in your target language. So if you watch TV or shows or read books in that language, I think it's super important to also be aware from the very beginning of the real rhythm of the language, of the real speed of the language, and how the actual natives are communicating. Yeah, okay, one more question. I think this is the last because we're slowly running out of time. So Nigel writes, I'm a maths computing teacher, retraining as a data scientist. I like to think my transferable skills will be important in tech, but mainly after I've got my foot in the door with my first company. I know I'll be competing with fresh graduates, which scares me. Do you think recruiters for an entry-level job will look at what else I have to offer? I hope so. I think so. I mean, I'm not a recruiter myself, but over the last year or so, I have sent, I think, about 600 CVs, 600 resumes, because I first landed the project management job and then the localization job. And it was definitely, these were definitely, entry-level jobs. So yes, I think I was asked during my interviews about all the languages that I speak and about my background in law and about my communication skills and what I really know about coding. So I think if you're retraining as a data scientist, but you have this very strong background, I feel like being a maths and computing teacher is a very strong background because you understand numbers and you understand the things behind data. I hope it will be an asset, and I hope the recruiters will be looking at it just like my recruiters were looking at my skills, even though I was quite fresh in the tech industry. And I think, of course, the competition is big, and it can be daunting to keep sending resumes, and it can be daunting to read the emails starting with, I regret to inform you, but we decided to proceed with another application this time. It's tough, but just don't give up and keep asking, keep applying, keep asking questions, keep getting better. And I hope there will be smart recruiters who will see your potential. Okay, I think we have 2 minutes left, which means that another session is starting in 2 minutes. So thank you so much for attending. Thank you for all the amazing questions. Thank you for interactions. And yeah, let's connect and see you on some other sessions probably, and maybe some other conferences. And good luck with transitioning into tech.